I was 9 the first time I heard it. At the time, I didn't think much of it, just a strange voice echoing in the back of my mind, soft and sharp all at once, like someone whispering through a keyhole. I was walking home from school, dragging my backpack along the curb, and there it was. Just 3 words, barely louder than the wind. "Don't cross now." I froze, right there on the edge of a busy intersection. A car swerved through the red light a second later, horn blaring, a blur of metal and headlights. Had I stepped forward, it would have hit me square. I looked around for someone, anyone. But the street was empty. I told my parents that night. They laughed it off, blamed it on cartoons or my overactive imagination. But it happened again. And again. By the time I was 12, the voice had become a strange kind of companion. It only ever spoke when something was about to go wrong. "Don't trust her," it warned when a classmate tried to frame me for stealing. "Take the long way home," it whispered when the usual shortcut turned out to be the scene of a mugging. Every warning was right. I stopped questioning it. I figured it was some weird instinct, like a sixth sense. I didn't tell anyone else. I liked having a secret. Something just mine. But secrets rot if you keep them too long. When I turned 15, the voice changed. Not in sound, it was still that strange, breathy whisper, but in tone. Before, it had always come in moments of danger. Now it started speaking without cause. "Turn left. Don't talk to him. Stay home tonight." It began to insert itself into everyday decisions, gently nudging me, guiding me like a hand on my back. And everything still worked out, better than before. I avoided fights, aced tests I hadn't studied for, even stopped a gas leak in our kitchen because the voice told me to check the stove. I felt chosen. But it didn't last. The night of my 17th birthday, I was alone in my room, watching the rain smear down my window, when the voice whispered something new. "He doesn't deserve to live." I froze. My skin crawled. For the first time in years, I whispered back, "What?" Silence. Then again, slower, firmer. "He doesn't deserve to live." The voice meant my father. That night, I barely slept. My father had his flaws. He drank too much, shouted more than he should, but he wasn't a bad man. Not bad enough to die. I thought maybe the voice had made a mistake. Or maybe I was finally losing it. But it wouldn't stop. For weeks, it repeated the same message. Always about him. "He hurts her," it said once, when I passed my mom's room and saw her crying silently in bed. "He's getting worse." Still, I resisted. Then, one evening, I came home to find my mother's arm bruised, her lip split. She tried to smile through it. Told me she fell. The voice didn't whisper that time. It screamed. "Now. Now is the time." And God help me, I listened. The voice told me what to do, step by step. "Wait until he's asleep," it murmured. "Use the hammer in the garage. Make it quick." I remember walking down the hall that night, every floorboard groaning beneath me like they knew what I was about to do. My heart thudded so loud I was sure it would wake him. I paused outside my parents' bedroom door, the hammer slick in my sweating hands. The voice was calm. Collected. "Now. For her. For you." The door creaked as I pushed it open. The room was dark except for the sliver of moonlight cutting across the bed. My father's shape was still, breathing slow. I stood there, shaking, hammer raised, until he rolled over, facing me. His eyes never opened, but in that moment, I saw something I hadn't expected. He looked old. Weak. Not monstrous. Human. My hands trembled. The voice didn't do it. But I couldn't. Not then. I backed out, barely holding back sobs, and ran outside. I sat on the cold concrete of our back porch until dawn, hammer in my lap, whispering to myself that I wasn't a killer. That I wasn't crazy. The voice was quiet all the next day. I thought maybe I'd fought it off. Maybe that was the end. I was wrong. That evening, he left. Packed a bag, mumbled something about needing space, and drove off without saying goodbye. And I felt relief. Maybe the voice knew this would happen. Maybe I didn't need to act because he was going to vanish on his own. But that's when the voice came back. Not calm this time. Not whispering. You were supposed to act. It screamed it. Over and over. My ears rang with it. The shadows in the corners of my room seemed to press in. My lights flickered, then died. My phone screen shattered in my hand. Every electronic in the house glitched or fizzed out. You failed. I curled up under my bed, whispering apologies to the dark. And for the first time since I was 9, I was afraid of the voice. Because I'd thought it was mine. But that night, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. It wasn't talking with me. It had just been waiting to be obeyed. I stopped sleeping for a while after that. The voice didn't speak every night, but when it did, it came through in strange ways. Not just in my head anymore. It started bleeding into things. Static on the TV would suddenly form words. The kitchen radio would switch on by itself, playing nothing but silence, then a warped version of the voice saying things like, "You owe us. Unpaid debt. A promise broken bleeds." I didn't remember making a promise. I didn't remember agreeing to anything. But the voice insisted I had. And then the mirror started showing things that didn't make sense. At first, it was little stuff. My reflection blinking a second too late. A movement in the background that wasn't actually there when I turned around. Then, one morning, I was brushing my teeth when the mirror fogged slightly, and a sentence appeared, traced perfectly in the condensation. "You're letting them suffer." I wiped the mirror clean, heart pounding. There was no one else in the house. My mom was at work. The windows were locked. I didn't even want to blink anymore. I tried to ignore it, tried to live like a normal 17-year-old. School. Homework. Pretending to laugh at jokes I didn't hear. But everything felt off. Like the world had been slightly tilted while I wasn't looking. My mom started noticing. "You okay, Jamie?" she asked one night as we ate dinner. "You've been jumpy lately." I almost told her everything right then and there. About the voice. About the hammer. About how I thought I'd invited something in, something old and hungry. But then I saw her wine glass tip over on its own. Saw the liquid pour sideways, unnaturally slow, like time itself was bending. And in the wine's surface, just for a second, I saw a reflection. Not of me. Not of her. But something else. It had no face. Just teeth. A lot of teeth. I blinked, and it was gone. My mom hadn't noticed a thing. The voice returned that night, soft again. Almost loving. "You should have done what I asked." That was the first night I saw the man in the corner of my room. He didn't move. He didn't speak. Just stood there in the dark, watching me sleep. Or maybe watching me try to sleep. Because after that, I didn't sleep at all. 3 days passed before I saw the man again. He was always in the same spot, back left corner of my bedroom, half hidden in the shadows. I could never see his face, just the faint outline of something tall, lean, too still to be real. But he was real. I threw things once, my alarm clock, a shoe, even a heavy textbook. They passed right through him, clattering against the wall. No sound from him. No flinch. Just watching. Then, the fourth night, he moved. Not fast. Just a step forward. I stopped breathing. My chest locked up. Every hair on my body stood screaming. I didn't dare blink. He reached into his coat, slow, deliberate, and placed something on my desk. Then he vanished. Not faded. Not disappeared. Just blinked out, like an image switching slides. I waited nearly an hour before I moved. When I finally got the courage, I crept toward the desk and saw what he'd left. A photograph. It was old, yellowed at the edges, the surface cracked like dry skin. It showed a boy standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. His eyes were scratched out. Deeply. Violently. On the back, someone had scrawled in red ink, no signature, no date, just 2 words. Your turn. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the photo until the morning light finally crept through the blinds like a weak apology. At school, everything felt hazy. My ears buzzed like a blown speaker. Faces blurred. Teachers' voices warped and bent in the air, like they were underwater. Then, during lunch, I saw her. Sitting alone at the edge of the cafeteria. A girl I didn't know. Pale. Too pale. Dressed in old-fashioned clothes like she'd walked out of a black and white movie. She was staring at me. No, through me. And when I blinked, she was suddenly at my table. Do you hear him too? She asked. I dropped my fork. My tray clattered. No one else reacted. I don't know what you mean, I whispered. Her eyes didn't blink. He chose you. Same as me. What is he? She leaned closer, her breath cold as winter air. He's the hollow. He finds the ones that listen. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked, why me? The girl smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Because you answered. And then she was gone. Just gone. No one else at the table noticed she'd been there at all. The photo. The voice. The girl. They weren't separate. They were steps. And something was coming next. That night, I found a second photo. It was on my pillow, as if tucked under my head while I slept, which I hadn't. I hadn't slept in days. This one showed a man, middle-aged, tired-looking, seated in a lawn chair in a backyard I didn't recognize. But the expression on his face, it was wrong. Too still. Like someone had posed a corpse and forgotten to close the mouth. The back read. One for each echo. The handwriting was the same jagged scrawl as before. I didn't understand it. But I felt it, somewhere deep in my ribs, behind the pounding of my heart. Each photo was a weight. A tally. I shoved the new one in my drawer next to the first. But I couldn't stop thinking about the girl. Her voice. The way she said, he chose you. He. The hollow. I tried to research it that night, desperate for anything. But there was nothing online. No myths, no cults, no obscure folklore with that name. Just static. Literal static. Every time I typed, the hollow, into a search bar, my screen fuzzed out. My speakers screamed with this piercing whine that left my ears ringing. Then the browser would close on its own. The message was clear, stop asking. So I asked someone else. I found the girl again. At school. Just standing by the gym lockers, like she'd been waiting. You came back, I said, surprised. I never left, she replied. You just stopped seeing me. What does he want from me? Her expression didn't change. He wants proof you're worthy. That you can listen. Obey. Finish what was started. Started by who? She tilted her head. Your grandfather. Your blood remembers. That caught me off guard. My grandfather had died before I was born. My mom barely spoke about him. I didn't even know his name until I was 11. What did he have to do with any of this? I don't understand, I muttered. You don't have to, she said. You just have to play. Play what? The girl reached into her coat and pulled out a third photo. This one was blank. Not empty. Blank. Like the image had been scrubbed off the paper with acid. But the back was the worst part. You choose who. My throat went dry. My hands went cold. What does that mean? She smiled that same unnatural smile. That's the game. Then she turned and walked away. This time, I didn't follow. Because I already knew. The hollow was done giving me instructions. Now it wanted me to decide. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, the blank photo in my hand, the girl's words echoing like a chant in my head, you choose who. It was empty, but I felt its weight. It wanted a face. It needed one. By 3 a.m., I couldn't sit still. I paced my room, gripping the photo so tightly it crinkled at the edges. At some point, I blacked out, not slept, blacked out, because when I opened my eyes, the sun was up and someone was knocking on the front door. I heard my mom greet them, then a familiar voice. Coach Bennett. He taught gym at my school. Strict, but fair. I'd seen him pull a kid aside last year for bullying, talk to him in private instead of humiliating him in front of the class. He was one of the few adults I actually respected. And suddenly, I knew. I knew the photo wanted his face. I don't know how. I don't know why. I just knew. I didn't even realize I was holding a pen until I looked down and saw I'd drawn him on the photo's surface. A crude sketch, black ink lines, hollow eyes, short cropped hair. A rough resemblance. The moment I finished, the paper pulsed warm beneath my fingers. A beat. A heartbeat. Then it faded to nothing. By the time I made it to school, I heard the news. Coach Bennett was gone. Collapsed in the parking lot before first period. No cause of death. No warning signs. Just, gone. The blank photo was no longer blank. Now it held a perfect image of Coach Bennett, in mid-laugh, eyes bright. And on the back, a new line. One accepted. I threw up in the school bathroom. I sat on the floor of the stall, shaking, trying to tell myself I didn't cause it. But I had. I had chosen. And the hollow had listened. When I got home that afternoon, there was another photo on my bed. A different person this time. A stranger. An old woman I didn't recognize. But I knew what I had to do. The hollow had fed once. Now it was hungry again. The second photo sat where the first one had been, centered perfectly on my pillow, the old woman staring up at me like she knew what I was thinking. She had sharp features, deep-set eyes, and a look of quiet resignation. Her hands were clasped in front of her, like she'd been posed. This time, there was a time and place written on the back. Corner of Ashwood and 9th, 5:43 p.m. No instructions. No name. Just coordinates and a time, like a delivery schedule. I stared at it for hours. This wasn't like Coach Bennett. I knew him. I didn't want what happened, but at least I understood the pull, the logic behind the choice. This woman was a total stranger. Was the hollow testing me? Seeing how far I'd go? I told myself I wouldn't. I couldn't. I crumpled the photo, threw it in the trash, and left the house to clear my head. I walked for hours, through neighborhoods I barely recognized, until dusk settled over everything in shades of gold and gray. That's when I found myself on Ashwood and 9th. I hadn't meant to go there. Hadn't realized where my feet were taking me. But as the sky bled orange behind the buildings, I looked at my phone. 5:42 p.m. A second later, the light changed, and the old woman stepped into the crosswalk. She didn't make it halfway. A truck came barreling through the intersection, no brakes, no horn, no warning. Just tires shrieking too late and a sickening thud. People screamed. I didn't move. I watched from the other side of the street, hands clenched into fists, heard a silent drumbeat in my ears. Someone shouted to call 911. Someone else cried. I just stood there. When I got home, the photo was back on my desk. Uncrumpled. Clean. The woman now lay still, eyes closed. Same face. Same hands. But this time, they weren't clasped, they were reaching out. The back now read. She saw you. That night, I locked every door and window in the house. I unplugged my TV, my laptop, even my phone. I slept with the lights on, the crumpled photo stuffed in my jacket pocket like a ward against something I didn't understand. But when I woke up, my window was open. And a third photo waited for me on the floor. This photo was different. Not because of who it showed, but because of how it showed them. It was blurry. Rushed. Like whoever, or whatever, had taken it was shaking. The figure in the picture was half-turned, caught mid-step in a dark alley. Their face was hard to make out, but there was one unmistakable detail. They were holding a photo of me. My breath caught in my throat. I turned it over. No time. No location. Just one word, scrawled hastily across the back. Run. I didn't hesitate. I packed a bag. Cash, clothes, a flashlight. I left a note for my mom saying I was visiting a friend, an old lie she'd stopped checking years ago, and by sundown, I was gone. I didn't know where I was going. Just, away. But no matter where I went, I felt watched. Not in the usual sense. Not like eyes from across the room. More like something heavy pressing in on the edges of my thoughts. A presence just outside my line of sight. I checked into a cheap motel 3 towns over. One of those places that smell like old carpet and sadness. I double-locked the door and collapsed onto the bed, heart still racing. And then I heard it. Not the whisper. Not the hollow. A knock. 3 soft knocks at the door. Slow. Measured. Like a heartbeat. I crept to the peephole. No one was there. But when I opened the door, a single envelope lay on the welcome mat. Inside was a photograph. Of the motel room I was standing in. Same bed. Same bag. Same me. Only I was asleep in the photo. And standing over me was the figure from the blurry photo. The one holding my picture. Their face was clearer now. And it looked exactly like mine. Not similar. Identical. Back of the photo said. The hollow remembers its promises. I dropped the photo and slammed the door shut, bolting it so hard the knob shook. I curled up in the corner, eyes on the door, every instinct screaming to run again, but where? This thing wasn't chasing me. It was leading me. And I was following like a puppet on invisible strings. I didn't leave the motel room for 2 days. I kept every light on, every curtain drawn. The mirror above the sink started fogging on its own. The TV would flicker static even when unplugged. At one point, the radio on the nightstand whispered my name in 3 different voices. One of them was my mother's. I tried to convince myself this was a breakdown. That maybe this was all some deep, unspooling psychosis. But the photo didn't lie. Neither did the voice that returned on the 3rd night. It didn't whisper. It screamed. You were chosen to finish the chain. The motel lights burst. One by one. Pop, pop, pop. My reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror started to lag behind my movements, twitching, blinking late, smiling when I wasn't. I covered the mirror. Sat in the bathtub with a knife from my bag. Just me and the dark and the hum in the walls. And then I saw the cracks. Not in the mirror. Not in the room. In me. They started in my thoughts, little interruptions, like static during a song. I'd be thinking about getting food and suddenly see a flash of someone drowning. I'd remember a childhood birthday and taste ashes. And then the dreams began. I'd close my eyes and find myself somewhere else. Walking endless halls lined with doors. Behind each one, a person I'd seen in the photographs. Some cried. Some screamed. Some just stared, dead-eyed, as the walls closed in around them. One door opened on its own. Inside, I saw myself. Older. Hollow-eyed. Sitting in a chair, hands shaking, holding a photo of someone else. A stranger. A child. I whispered, he never stops. Just gets quieter. I woke up with blood under my fingernails and a new photo in my lap. This time, there were two people. A couple. Smiling, arms around each other. And me, just barely visible in the background. Watching. Always watching. The couple in the photo, I recognized them. Not well. Just enough. They ran the corner store a block from my house. I'd seen them dozens of times growing up. Mrs. Lind had given me free gum once when I'd scraped my knee outside their shop. Mr. Lind always wore the same flannel shirt and nodded politely, like he remembered everyone's name even if he didn't. They were good people. And now they were next. I turned the photo over. Return the favor. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't want to know. But when I got back to town, the shop was closed. Lights off. Windows dark. A handwritten sign read, "Closed for personal reasons." I stood there on the sidewalk, photo in my pocket, and felt something stir behind me. Not a person. Not a presence. A pull. When I turned around, across the street, I saw the girl again. The one who'd given me the blank photo. She was sitting on a bench, smiling. Calm. Like this was all perfectly normal. "You're not listening fast enough," she called out, voice almost playful. "What does it want?" I shouted back. She tilted her head. "Same thing it's always wanted." Echoes. It collects them. Echoes of what? She stood and walked toward me. The air around her shimmered faintly, like heat off asphalt, even though it was freezing out. Choices. Consequences. Regret, she said softly. All the flavors of pain. The hollow doesn't care which. It just wants to feed. I looked down at the photo again. Why them? Because they mattered to you. Even a little. She leaned in. Whispered. "You're the conduit, Jamie. You let it in. And now? It's your responsibility." Before I could reply, she turned and walked into traffic. Not metaphorically, into traffic. Cars honked, swerved, braked, but never hit her. They didn't even see her. She faded between headlights and was gone. I looked back at the shop. And the door was suddenly ajar. Inside, I found the Linds, alive. Asleep. Both seated in chairs behind the counter. Heads tilted slightly. Mouths moving in silent, synchronized words. Their eyes fluttered like they were dreaming, or stuck. On the floor between them was a photo. Of me. And on the back. "Now you're part of the story." I didn't touch the photo on the floor. I couldn't. The air in the store was thick, like trying to breathe underwater. The lights buzzed, dim and sickly yellow. The Lin still sat frozen, mouths murmuring wordless prayers or incantations I couldn't decipher. And my photo just sat there between them. I backed away. As I turned to leave, I felt it. A weight behind me. Not footsteps. Not breath. A presence. When I glanced back, there was someone new standing beside them. Tall. Pale. Wearing a coat that looked stitched from shadow. No face, just a smooth stretch where one should be. It didn't speak. But I heard it anyway. Too late to undo. Too early to escape. I bolted. I ran for blocks before collapsing behind a dumpster in an alley I didn't recognize. I dry heaved until my throat burned, then curled into myself, shaking. The hollow was using me. Worse, it had marked me. I didn't know how I knew. But I felt it. Like a second heartbeat pulsing behind my spine, tethering me to something vast and ancient. Something not human. That night, I dreamed of doors again. Only this time, I wasn't walking the halls. I was behind one of the doors, locked inside a glass box, floating in a dark sea. Faces drifted past me. All the people I'd chosen. Coach Bennett. The old woman. The Lins. Even the girl in the old-fashioned clothes. They didn't blink. Didn't breathe. They just watched. And then, he came. The hollow. The water didn't move, but his coat rippled. His faceless head turned toward me. And I heard his voice, clear and cold, like a wind through bone. "You're almost ready." I woke up screaming. My hands were bleeding. And a new photo lay beside me on the alley floor. This time, it was me. Looking into a mirror I didn't remember taking. And behind me in the reflection? A dozen blurred faces, watching. Waiting. The faces in the photo haunted me. I couldn't recognize them, not clearly. Some were distorted, others half-faded like old memories I never had. But one thing was clear. They were all mine. People I'd passed on the street, sat next to in class, maybe even brushed shoulders with once in a crowded place. Casual, forgettable connections. But they remembered me. And now they were following. I tried burning the photo. I lit a match, dropped it onto the glossy paper, but instead of curling into ash, it screamed. A high-pitched wail like metal tearing, a shriek that echoed off brick and bone. The flames froze. Mid-air. Suspended in a second that stretched too long. Then vanished. The photo was untouched. On the back, the writing had changed. Witnesses gather. The gate stirs. That night, the mirrors turned on me again. First in the motel bathroom. Then the black reflection in the TV. Then puddles in the street. Every time I looked, I didn't see my reflection. I saw a room. Huge. Circular. Stone walls etched with spirals and eyes and mouth stretched far too wide. And I was standing in the center, surrounded by the people from the photo. The witnesses. They chanted. Not in words. But in something deeper. Older. Like the language of a storm. The hollow watched from the wall, half shadow, half monster, bleeding into reality like mold through drywall. And in the center of the floor, there was a pit. A perfect circle. Something was rising from it. Something that smelled like burnt teeth and oil. I blinked, and found myself back in the motel. But my mouth tasted like ash. My hands were damp with something thick and black. I was changing. Or maybe being prepared. The hollow didn't just want echoes. It wanted a voice. And it had chosen mine. I started losing time. At first, it was small. Minutes. Gaps I could blame on stress or exhaustion. I'd look at the clock and suddenly hours would be gone. Then, it got worse. I'd wake up in different clothes. In different towns. Once, I came to in the middle of a library, holding a book I didn't remember taking off the shelf, something bound in cracked leather, no title on the spine, just a symbol etched deep into the cover, a spiral inside a jaw. Inside were photos. My photos. Page after page. All the ones I'd been given. And more, ones I hadn't seen yet. Faces of people I hadn't chosen. But apparently would. One page was blank. I turned it, and there I was. Not a photo. A sketch. My face, staring out with hollow eyes. Underneath, in ink that looked like dried blood. The voice must become the vessel. The library was empty. Silent. Every light flickered like it was struggling to stay tethered to this world. And then a sound, something dragging. I turned and saw the man from before, the hollow shape in a coat of stitched shadow, crawling down the wall like a spider, limbs too long, face still a blank stretch of skin. He whispered without moving his mouth. "You've been rehearsing. Now it's time to perform." I ran. I didn't stop until the sun was high and my legs were numb. I collapsed in a bus station, panting, trying to remember who I was running from anymore. Because it wasn't just the hollow now. It was me. Something inside was shifting. Unraveling. Parts of me felt distant, like I was watching my thoughts from the outside. Like I was no longer entirely alone in my own body. The next morning, I checked the mirror. And for the first time, I blinked second. My reflection blinked first. I smashed the mirror. It didn't help. Every shard still showed my reflection blinking out of sync. Watching me. Studying. Waiting for something. I tried not to look anymore. At anything reflective. I covered screens. Avoided windows. But reflections are sneaky, they find you. In puddles. Car paint. Even the sheen of someone's eyes. And wherever I saw them, I saw him. The hollow wasn't whispering anymore. He was speaking through me. It started when I blacked out again. Came to in a cafe bathroom, gripping the sink, my voice echoing off the tile. But I hadn't said anything. Not consciously. My mouth moved on its own. Repeating a phrase over and over. I open the gate. I open the gate. I open the gate. Over and over, until the lights buzzed and the air thickened and the walls began to drip, not water, but something darker. Like the world itself was sweating. I saw people gathering outside. All the ones from the photos. They weren't dead. They weren't alive either. They were waiting. Waiting for the gate to open. And I was the key. The next blackout was longer. When I came to, I was underground. A tunnel, stone and ancient and wrong, the air buzzing with static. Torches flickered. The girl was there. The one with the blank eyes and the crooked smile. She reached out and touched my chest. "You're almost ready," she said. Almost hollow enough. Then she placed something in my hand. A photo. Of the pit. The one from my dreams. And now it had a date and time. Tomorrow. Midnight. "Speak," the voice in my head said. "And the hollow will rise." And this time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to stop it. Because deep down, part of me, some rotted piece that wasn't mine anymore, was excited. I didn't fight it anymore. How could I? By the time midnight approached, I wasn't sure where I ended and the hollow began. My thoughts weren't mine, not fully. They echoed. Doubled. Warped in ways I didn't recognize. The tunnel led to a chamber just like the one in my dreams. Circular. Endless. Silent. The pit waited in the center, dark and hungry. The air vibrated like a held breath. And around the edges of the room stood the witnesses, every face I'd seen in the photos, their eyes hollow, mouths stitched into serene, silent smiles. I stood at the edge of the pit, clutching the final photo. It was blank again. But I knew what it meant. This was my turn. The girl stepped out from the crowd. Her dress now looked older, dust-covered, shredded at the hem. Her voice sounded far away, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. "You were never meant to survive this," she said. "You were meant to complete it." I opened my mouth to scream, to deny, to plead, but my voice wasn't mine. It was his. The hollow. Words spilled from my throat in a language I didn't know but understood anyway. The chamber trembled. The pit opened wider, deeper. Shapes stirred below, long-limbed things, all teeth and whisper. The witnesses began to chant. And I stepped forward. Not because I wanted to. Because I had become the next echo. The last thing I remember before the darkness swallowed me was the photo slipping from my hand and drifting into the pit. My photo. My face. My eyes. Still blinking out of sync. They say you only die once. But I didn't die. Not really. I changed. Now I sit in the corner of someone else's room. I don't move. I don't speak. I just watch. Because the voice never disappears once you answer it. It just waits for the next one to listen. The end.